We begin then not by doing something, not by trying to achieve a state, not by attempting to still the mind or quiet the body, but by acknowledging a simple and profound fact. Stillness already is. We are not entering it. We are becoming aware of it. We are not bringing silence into our experience. We are ceasing for a moment to overlook the silence that has always been present. Be still, the scripture says, and know that I am God. It does not say, be still in order that God may come. It does not say, be still so that something may happen. It simply says, be still and know. The knowing follows the stillness, not the effort. So let us drop, just here and now, the belief that something must be accomplished. Let us set aside the notion that we are here to improve ourselves, to fix our lives, to correct our thinking, or even to become more spiritual. None of that is required. The Christ did not say, blessed are they who strive, but blessed are the poor in spirit, those who are empty, those who have ceased from their own mental riches, those who have laid down the burden of self-direction. And it is to that poverty of spirit that the kingdom is revealed. We are not here to seek God as though God were absent. We are not here to reach upward or outward, as if the presence were somewhere else. The kingdom of God is within you. That is not poetry. It is fact. It is not a promise. It is a statement of reality. And because it is already within, there is nothing we can add to it. There is only something we can stop doing. We can stop resisting it with noise, with effort, with thought, with will. Many come to this moment believing that silence is something to be created, but silence is not created. Silence is discovered. It is what remains when we stop filling consciousness with our opinions, our fears, our hopes, our memories, and our plans. And so, without condemnation and without judgment, we simply let those things rest, not because they are bad, but because they are unnecessary right now. Take no thought, the Master said, not as a moral command, but as a revelation of freedom. Take no thought and see what remains. What remains is not emptiness. What remains is presence. What remains is that which has been sustaining you long before you ever thought about God. In Him we live and move and have our being. That is not something that begins when we meditate. It is something that has always been so. And the moment we stop trying to manage life through the human mind, that presence begins to make itself felt, not dramatically, not emotionally, but quietly, gently, with an assurance that passes understanding. We do not rush into this. We do not force our way in. We do not attempt to still the mind by violence. The mind does not need to be silenced. It needs to be rested. Just as the body rests when it is no longer driven, so the mind rests when it is no longer used as the instrument of salvation, not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. And so we let the Spirit do what the Spirit has always been doing, while we step aside from the role we were never meant to play. There is nothing sacred about strain. There is nothing holy about effort. Grace does not come through intensity. It comes through surrender. The presence of God does not respond to concentration. It responds to availability. And availability is simply this: a willingness to let go. A willingness to say, if only inwardly, Father, I rest. A willingness to echo the ancient prayer, I will keep silence before thee, and my soul shall be thy dwelling place. As we stand at this threshold, we are not crossing into something new. We are standing still long enough to recognize what has always been here. The door does not open because we push it. It opens because we stop leaning against it. And when we stop leaning, when we stop pressing our human sense of self into the mystery, we discover that the door was never closed at all. So we begin gently, quietly, without expectation, not seeking an experience, not demanding a result, not even asking a question. We simply consent to be still, and in that consent, something deeper than thought begins to take over. Something wiser than the human mind assumes its rightful place. And we find, perhaps to our surprise, that we are not alone in the silence. We never were. Now, having come to this place of quiet consent, we do not rush forward to do something with it. We do not seize upon stillness as a technique or attempt to hold it with the human will. Instead, we allow ourselves to be drawn a little deeper, not by effort, but by attention. And even that word, attention, must be understood rightly. This is not the attention that strains or focuses or concentrates. This is the attention that listens. Most of us have been trained all our lives to listen outwardly to sounds, to voices, to opinions, to news, to the constant clamor of the world. Even when we turn to prayer, we often carry that same habit with us, listening for words, for answers, for guidance that the human ear or the human mind can grasp. But the voice of God is not heard with the outer ear, and it is not grasped by the reasoning faculty. The natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are spiritually discerned. And spiritual discernment begins where human listening ends. There is an inner ear, of which the mystics have spoken in every age. Elijah discovered it when he stood upon the mount and found that God was not in the wind, nor in the earthquake, nor in the fire, but in the still small voice. That voice was not small because it was weak. It was small because it did not compete. It did not shout over human thought. It waited until human thought became quiet enough to notice. So here we turn not outward, not upward, but inward. And we do not turn with expectation. Expectation is a form of effort. Expectation is the mind leaning forward, trying to grasp something before it is given. Instead, we cultivate an attitude of listening without demand, listening without anticipation, listening as one who knows that if something is to be revealed, it will be revealed in its own way and in its own time. This listening is not an act of the intellect. You are not trying to hear words. You are not trying to receive messages. You are not even trying to feel something. You are simply being present, inwardly available, as though you were standing at the door of consciousness, aware but not knocking. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth, is not a request for speech. It is a declaration of receptivity. And you will notice, as you rest in this listening, that the mind may continue to produce thoughts. Let them come and let them go. They have nothing to do with this listening. Thoughts are not enemies. They are irrelevant. They belong to another level of awareness. The inner ear does not argue with them, does not silence them, does not correct them. It simply does not follow them. And because it does not follow them, they gradually lose their authority. Listening, in this sense, is a form of surrender. It is the relinquishment of the belief that the human mind must be in charge. It is the quiet acknowledgement that there is an intelligence already present, already active, already governing. The Father within, he doeth the works. And if the Father within is doing the works, then the human mind may rest from its labors. There may come a moment, and it may be very subtle, when you feel as though you have tuned in to something just beyond thought, not beyond awareness, but beyond mental formulation. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It does not say, I am God. It is simply a sense of rightness, of presence, of being held. And even if that sense does not come, do not be disturbed. The listening itself is the prayer. The listening itself is the communion. We are not listening to God as though God were separate. We are listening in God as God. For if there is only one mind, then the moment the human mind becomes still, that one mind begins to be recognized. And recognition is all that is necessary. Before they call, I will answer. And while they are yet speaking, I will hear. The answer is not something added to consciousness. It is consciousness unveiled. So remain gently in this listening attitude, not waiting, not watching, not searching, simply listening without object, without goal, without strain. And in this listening, something within you knows that it has come home. There is no excitement in this knowing, no emotion attached to it. There is only a quiet certainty, and that certainty does not come from thought. It comes from truth, bearing witness to itself. As we remain in this attitude of listening, something very important begins to reveal itself, not through analysis, not through reasoning, but through quiet awareness. We begin to see, perhaps for the first time, how much of our lives have been lived under the assumption that there are two powers, one called God and one called the world, one called spirit and one called matter, one called harmony, and one called discord. And it is this belief in two powers that has kept the human mind in ceaseless activity forever, trying to choose, to fix, to overcome, to defend, and to protect. But the moment we come into stillness, the mind begins to tire of that burden. It begins quite naturally to let go. For in the presence of truth, error does not need to be fought. It simply loses its plausibility. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. That is not a theological statement. It is a spiritual law. There is one power, one presence, one life. And when that is recognized, even faintly, the whole structure of mental effort begins to collapse. We have believed that if we do not think, things will go wrong. We have believed that if we do not manage, control, and plan, life will fall apart. And yet the Master said, which of you by taking thought can add 1 cubit unto his stature? Taking thought has never been the source of life. It has never been the source of supply. It has never been the source of health or peace. Thought has only been the attempt to manage what God is already governing. So now, without argument and without resistance, we let the mind rest. We do not try to stop thinking. That would only give thought more importance. We simply see that thought is not power. We see that thought is not law. We see that thought is not the creative principle of the universe. My thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways. My ways, saith the Lord. And when that is seen, thought can take its proper place as a servant, not a master. This is the great release. Not the release from problems, not the release from circumstances, but the release from the belief that the human mind must solve them. The moment that belief loosens, a deep rest enters consciousness. And that rest is not sleep. It is alert, alive, aware. It is what the scriptures call peace that passeth understanding. Peace not because everything has been explained, but because nothing needs to be explained. Here we discover that evil, lack, disease, confusion, all the appearances that once seemed so real have no power of their own. They have borrowed power from belief. And belief itself has no power in the presence of truth. Resist not evil, the Master said, not because evil is strong, but because it is unreal. Resistance gives reality to that which has none. Non-resistance, born of understanding, allows the light to dissolve the darkness without effort. So we stop fighting. We stop battling thoughts. We stop correcting mental pictures. We stop affirming truth against error. We rest in the realization that there is only one presence, and that presence is all. I am the Lord, and there is none else. When that is glimpsed, even for a moment, the mind naturally becomes quiet, not because it is forced into silence, but because it has nothing left to do. This is the Sabbath of consciousness. This is the rest that was promised. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Not rest to the body only, but rest to the mind, rest to the soul, rest from the ancient burden of believing that you must live life by personal power. And in that rest, something within you takes over, something that has always been there, waiting patiently for the human sense to step aside. Remain here, then, without effort. Let thoughts pass like shadows across the surface of awareness. They do not need attention. They do not need correction. Beneath them is a stillness that is not disturbed. Beneath them is a presence that is not moved. And as you abide there, you begin to know, not intellectually, but inwardly, that there has never been more than one power, one life, one mind. And that mind is the mind which is also in Christ Jesus. Now, as the mind rests from its labors and the belief in two powers loosens its hold, there comes, without announcement, without drama, a subtle shift. It is not an experience in the human sense. It is not an emotion, nor a vision, nor a thought. It is a recognition that what you have been calling God is not an idea to be believed, nor a doctrine to be accepted, but a presence to be felt. And this presence does not come to you. It reveals itself as that which has always been with you. Up to this point, many have spoken of God as though God were something to be attained, reached, or contacted. But the truth is simpler and far more intimate. Lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. God is not with you in the future. God is not with you conditionally. God is with you now. And more than that, God is within you as the very substance of your awareness. The mistake has never been that God was absent. The mistake has been that attention was elsewhere. When thought subsides, even a little, this presence begins to make itself known, not through the senses, not through the intellect, but through a quiet sense of being upheld. There is a feeling not emotional, but real, of support, of stability, of something deeper than the personal self carrying the weight of existence. And in that moment, one understands why the psalmist could say, underneath are the everlasting arms. Those arms are not outside of you. They are the very foundation of your consciousness. This is why words about God have never satisfied the soul. You can speak about God endlessly and remain untouched. But the moment God is felt, even faintly, the need for words disappears. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Taste not, think, not analyze, not affirm. Taste. Feeling precedes understanding here, and that feeling is not excitement or rapture. It is quiet certainty. It is the calm assurance that all is well, not because circumstances have changed, but because reality has been recognized. Do not try to hold this recognition. The moment you try to grasp it, it slips back into concept. Presence is not held, it is allowed. It is like light in a room. You do not catch it, you remove the obstruction. And as you remain still, without trying to name what is happening, without attempting to describe it to yourself, this sense of presence deepens of its own accord. Grace unfolds naturally when it is not interfered with. Here we discover that God is not a distant ruler, not a judging power, not a force to be appeased. God is life itself, your life. I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. That abundance is not quantity, it is depth. It is the depth of awareness that comes when the false sense of separation dissolves. And in that dissolution, fear has nothing to stand on. You may notice now that there is less interest in thoughts about yesterday or tomorrow. Time begins to lose its grip. This is not because you are suppressing memory or planning, but because you are touching something timeless. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. That which you are becoming aware of does not move through time. Time moves through it, and as you rest here, even briefly, the weight of past and future lifts. This presence does not speak in sentences. It does not explain itself. It does not instruct. It is, and its being is communicative in a way words can never be. It communicates peace without reasoning, order without control, harmony without effort. And this is why the Master could sleep in the storm. He was not trusting a thought about God. He was resting in the presence of God. Remain, then, without labeling this. Do not call it God, or Christ, or Spirit, or Presence, unless a name rises naturally and quietly within. Names are not important here. What is important is the recognition, the awareness, the felt reality. For once God is known in this way, even dimly, you will never again be satisfied with a second-hand religion. You will know why it is written, "They shall all be taught of God." Having come to this recognition of presence, there is now something very important to understand, lest the human mind attempt to take over again and turn even this sacred awareness into a practice, a system, or a routine. What is happening here is not the result of discipline, nor of repetition, nor of correct technique. It is the activity of grace. And grace, by its very nature, cannot be earned, directed, or improved upon. By grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God. So now we rest not because we have done something well, but because there is nothing left to do. The temptation at this point is subtle. The mind may say, now I have found it, now I must learn how to keep it, now I must return to this state again tomorrow. But that very impulse is the old belief in personal responsibility attempting to reassert itself. Grace does not need to be maintained. Grace maintains you. The stillness you are touching is not fragile. It does not come and go at the whim of human attention. It is the ground of your being. The reason it has seemed to come and go is that attention has wandered, not that presence has departed. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. Even in confusion, even in noise, even in fear, this presence remains intact. Our work is not to bring it back, but to stop leaving it. Here we learn the difference between spiritual practice and spiritual yielding. Practice implies effort, repetition, and improvement. Yielding implies trust. It implies a willingness to let God be God. And that willingness is itself the highest prayer. When the Master said, "Not my will, but thine be done," he was not making a plea. He was stating a fact. He was resting in the recognition that there is only one will, one law, one activity, and that activity is divine. So we let the stillness work. We do not attempt to use it for healing, for supply, for guidance, or for peace. The moment we try to use it, we step out of it. Stillness is not a means to an end. It is the end of means. And yet, paradoxically, it is in this resting that healing unfolds, that supply appears, that order establishes itself. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Added, not achieved, not earned, not forced. Grace works silently. It does not announce its progress. It does not consult the human mind. It does not explain its methods. It simply unfolds, naturally and inevitably, as consciousness yields. And this is why so many have struggled spiritually. They have tried to do what can only be allowed. They have tried to demonstrate what can only be recognized. They have tried to practice what must be trusted. As you remain here, you may notice that there is less interest in judging the depth of your stillness. You are no longer asking, is this deep enough? Is this real? Is this working? Those questions belong to a consciousness that still believes it must evaluate God. But God is not subject to evaluation. God reveals itself in proportion as we stop evaluating. This is the great Sabbath, the rest that follows creation, not because creation is finished, but because it is complete. God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. That goodness did not need improvement then, and it does not need improvement now. What is required is recognition, and recognition flowers naturally when we rest in grace. So remain quietly, without expectation. Let the stillness be still. Let grace do what grace has always done. You are not holding yourself in God's presence. God's presence is holding you. And when that is known, not thought, not affirmed, but known, you understand why the psalmist could say, "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life," not because he pursued them, but because he rested in the source from which they flow. Now, as we rest in grace and allow the stillness to be itself, there comes another gentle revelation, so gentle that it may be overlooked if we are not attentive. It is the realization that time, as we have known it, begins to lose its authority. We are no longer counting moments. We are no longer measuring progress. We are no longer waiting for something to happen. And this is not because we have entered into a trance or withdrawn from awareness, but because we are touching that which is not in time. Human consciousness lives by clocks and calendars. It remembers yesterday and anticipates tomorrow. It asks, how long has this lasted? How much longer must I wait? But spiritual consciousness knows nothing of duration. It lives in what the Master called the hour that now is. Before Abraham was, I am. Not I was, not I will be, I am. And that I am is the eternal present, the only place where God can be known. As long as we are watching the clock of consciousness, we cannot rest. Waiting is a form of tension. Expectation is a subtle form of effort. But when we let go of the need to measure, something within us relaxes completely. We are no longer trying to get somewhere. We are no longer asking whether this silence is deep enough, long enough, or effective enough. We are simply here, and here is where God is. This is why the scriptures speak of abiding. Abide in me, and I in you. Abiding is not an act. It is a state of being. You do not abide by trying. You abide by remaining where you already are. And you remain not by holding on, but by not leaving. When attention ceases to wander into past regrets or future hopes, it naturally settles into the now. And in the now, the presence is unmistakable. You may notice that in this timeless awareness, there is no impatience, there is no sense of lack, there is no question that needs answering. Time was the medium through which fear operated, fear of what has been, fear of what may be. But when time loosens its grip, fear has nowhere to stand. Perfect love casteth out fear. That love is not emotional affection. It is the completeness of the present moment when nothing is missing. Here, even the desire for spiritual attainment fades. You are no longer trying to become something better, wiser, or holier. You are resting in being, and being needs no improvement. Be still and know. Knowing does not come through movement. It comes through stillness. It comes when the mind ceases to run ahead of life or lag behind it and simply meets life where it is. This timeless abiding is not something you must maintain. It is not fragile. It is not dependent on silence or conditions. It is the background of every experience, though rarely noticed. And the more often you touch it, the less you think about touching it. It becomes familiar, not as a habit, but as a home. You begin to recognize it even in activity, even in sound, even in motion. For eternity is not the absence of movement, it is the presence of reality. So remain without watching the minutes, without checking in on yourself, without asking how long this has been or how long it should be. Let time pass if it will. Let it stand still if it chooses. You are not in time now. Time is in you. And as you abide in this awareness, you begin to understand why the apostle could say, now are we the sons of God. Not later, not someday, now. As we abide here, beyond time and beyond effort, there is a subtle but profound shift in our understanding of healing. Up to this point in our human experience, healing has seemed to be something that must be sought, directed, or achieved, something that requires attention to conditions, symptoms, or circumstances. But in the light of this stillness, another truth reveals itself. Healing is not an act, it is a consequence. It is not a goal, it is a byproduct of truth realized. Healing does not come because we have asked for it correctly, nor because we have held the right thought, nor because we have attained a certain depth of meditation. Healing comes because the false sense of separation has relaxed. And when separation relaxes, harmony is uncovered. I am the Lord that healeth thee. That statement does not describe an intervention. It declares an identity. God does not do healing. God is the wholeness of being. Notice that in this stillness, there is no attempt to heal anything. There is no naming of conditions. There is no searching of the body or the mind for something that needs correction. And yet, precisely because we are not trying to heal, the law of harmony is free to operate. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added. Added, not requested, not forced, not mentally arranged, added as a natural result. This is why the Master never treated disease as a reality. He did not study it. He did not diagnose it. He did not even resist it. He simply knew the truth of being, and that truth made the false appearance irrelevant. Stretch forth thy hand, he said, not because the hand needed to be fixed, but because the man needed to recognize that life was not limited. The healing followed recognition, not effort. So here we rest without intention. Intention belongs to the realm of personal will. And personal will, no matter how sincere, cannot bring forth spiritual results. The flesh profiteth nothing. When we let go of the desire to change, improve, or fix ourselves or others, we are not becoming passive, we are becoming receptive. We are making room for the activity of the Christ, which heals silently and without announcement. If there is pain in the body, let it be. If there is unrest in the mind, let it be. We are not ignoring these things. We are refusing to grant them authority. We are not denying their appearance. We are denying their power, for power belongs to God alone. I am God, and there is none else. And where there is only one power, appearances cannot govern outcomes. You may find, as you rest here, that there is a softening, a loosening, a release that you did not plan and could not have produced. This is not because you have done something right. It is because you have stopped interfering. Healing, supply, peace, these are not achievements of the human self. They are evidences of divine order becoming visible when consciousness aligns with truth. And let us understand this clearly. Healing does not always announce itself immediately to human sense. It unfolds according to spiritual law, not human expectation. But once truth has been recognized, the process is irreversible. My word shall not return unto me void. What has been seen cannot be unseen. What has been recognized cannot be undone. Stillness has its own authority. Remain, then, without watching for results. Watching is another form of effort. Trust the law, trust the presence, trust the silence, the stillness that knows God, knows how to heal without help. And as you abide in this awareness, you will find that harmony expresses itself naturally in the body, in the mind, and in the affairs of life, not because you have worked for it, but because you have yielded to what eternally is. Now, as we remain in this stillness, free of effort, free of intention, free even of the desire for healing, there comes a realization so simple that the human mind often overlooks it. It is the realization of oneness, not oneness as an experience to be attained, not oneness as a mystical union to be achieved, but oneness as a fact already established. I and my Father are one. That statement was not a claim of special privilege. It was a revelation of spiritual identity. Up to this point, many have believed that oneness with God must be felt in some extraordinary way. They have waited for a sense of merging, a loss of individuality, a moment of ecstasy. But oneness is not an experience. Experience belongs to the realm of duality, one who experiences and something experienced. Oneness leaves no room for such division. It is known, not felt. It is recognized, not achieved. Here, thought becomes unnecessary. Not because thought has been silenced, but because it has nothing to add. The truth of oneness does not improve with explanation. It does not deepen with description. It simply is. The Lord, He is God. There is none else beside Him. And if there is none beside Him, then there is no separate self standing apart, hoping to unite with what has never been divided. This is why the Master could say, "Abide in me." He was not asking for devotion to a person. He was pointing to a state of consciousness. Abiding means resting in the awareness that there is one life, and that life is expressing itself as your being. You are not entering into oneness. You are ceasing to imagine separation. And the moment that imagination loosens, even slightly, the burden of selfhood begins to fall away. You may notice now that there is no urge to say, "I am one with God." Statements belong to thought. Oneness needs no declaration. It reveals itself as quiet assurance, as a sense of rightness so complete that it requires no reinforcement. The Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit. Witness, not argument, not proof. Witness is silent recognition. In this recognition, there is no pride and no humility. Both belong to the personal sense of self. There is simply being, and being is enough. You are not more spiritual here. You are more real. You are not rising above humanity. You are seeing through the false concept of humanity as separate from God. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, not by attainment, but by recognition. This conscious oneness does not remove you from the world. It frees you within it. You do not disappear. You are not absorbed. You are clarified. You function, speak, act, but without the burden of believing that you are the source of life. It is not I, but Christ that liveth in me. That statement does not deny individuality. It establishes true individuality as the expression of God. Remain here, then, without trying to hold this awareness. Holding belongs to fear. Oneness does not need protection. It is the nature of reality. Whether you are aware of it or not, it remains intact. Awareness does not create it. Awareness simply stops obscuring it. And as you rest in this simplicity, you may find that even the desire for spiritual language falls away. Silence becomes sufficient. Now, without any abrupt change, and without breaking the sacred continuity of this stillness, there is a gentle return of awareness to what the world calls form, not because the silence has ended, but because silence has proven itself sufficient to include all things. We are not coming out of stillness. We are discovering that stillness was never separate from life, never opposed to activity, never confined to inward moments alone. You may notice awareness of the body again, not as a burden, not as a problem to be managed, but simply as a function of life. The breath is noticed, the posture is known, the sense of place returns, and yet something is different. The old sense of strain does not return with it. There is no urgency. There is no feeling that you must now take control again. The Lord shall go before thee, and the God of Israel shall be thy reward. You are not being sent back into life alone. You are discovering that you were never apart from the presence that lives it. This is the great misunderstanding about silence, that it is an escape from the world. Silence is not escape. It is foundation. It is the ground upon which all right activity rests. The Master did not remain in the mountain forever. He came down and walked among the people, but he did not leave the Father there. I am not alone, because the Father is with me. And that same awareness is now dawning here, not as a thought to remember, but as a state of being that accompanies you. Thought may resume its natural function. Words may form. Plans may appear, but they no longer carry the weight they once did. They are tools, not masters. They are expressions, not sources. You may notice that you are less inclined to argue with circumstances, less inclined to resist what is, less inclined to take personal responsibility for outcomes that never belonged to you in the first place. Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. That casting is not an action. It is a recognition that the burden was never yours. As awareness opens outward, silence remains inward, not as something you hold on to, but as something that holds you. You are not required to remember this silence consciously throughout the day. Memory belongs to time. This stillness belongs to eternity. It will assert itself whenever needed, without being summoned. And often, it will be most evident when you are least aware of it. This is the secret of living the infinite way, not retreating from the world, but letting the world rest in God. You do not have to protect this awareness. You do not have to explain it to anyone. You do not have to name it. The place whereon thou standest is holy ground, not because you have made it holy, but because God is there, and God is everywhere. So as you feel the gentle return of attention to the outer world, do not hurry, do not grasp, do not conclude. Let silence remain the background of all that appears. Let presence remain the substance of all that unfolds. And you will find, perhaps without noticing when it happened, that life is being lived more simply, more harmoniously, more effortlessly than before, not because you are doing something new, but because you have stopped interfering with what eternally is. And so we do not end this moment, because what has been touched here does not begin or end. We do not gather it up, package it, or carry it away as though it were something separate from ourselves. There is nothing to take with you, because nothing has been given. What has occurred is simply a recognition, quiet, gentle, unmistakable, that the presence which has been felt is the presence that has always been. There is no need now to say, I have experienced God, or I have entered stillness, or I have reached awareness. Those statements belong to the personal sense of self, and that sense has quietly stepped aside. What remains does not need a name. It does not announce itself. It does not ask to be remembered. It simply is, I am that I am. And that I am requires no witness other than itself. If you are tempted to look back over this time and evaluate it, whether it was deep enough, quiet enough, successful enough, let that temptation pass. Evaluation belongs to the realm of time and mind. Grace does not submit to review. What has been revealed reveals itself again whenever needed, not because you call upon it, but because it is the nature of reality to be present. You are not asked to protect this awareness. You are not asked to preserve it. You are not even asked to return to it. Returning implies departure, and there has been no departure. The stillness you have known here will express itself in ways you do not plan, in patience where there was impatience, in ease where there was effort, in clarity where there was confusion. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace. Fruit grows naturally. It is not manufactured. Let the world see only the fruits. Keep the pearl hidden, not hidden through secrecy, but hidden through silence. When thou prayest, enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret. The secret place is not a location, it is a consciousness, and it remains available, untouched, undisturbed, regardless of outer conditions. If tomorrow the noise returns, do not be disturbed. Noise does not undo silence. If thought becomes active again, do not resist it. Resistance grants importance. Simply remember, if remembering is needed, that underneath all movement is stillness, underneath all sound is silence, underneath all appearance is God, underneath are the everlasting arms. We do not conclude with instruction. We do not conclude with encouragement. We do not conclude with a blessing spoken outwardly. The blessing has already been given. It was given before you asked, before you listened, before you became still, and it remains quietly unfolding as your very life. So we leave this as it is, open, unfinished, alive. Let the silence continue where words have stopped